My parents said my loft had too much space for one person. Now my sister runs a $7,000 per month pottery business from my living room and they're suggesting I move out. Hi everyone. Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. Original post. My sister needs to store some art supplies. I, 29M, need some perspective on a family situation that's been developing. For context, I work as a software engineer and recently purchased a 2,200 square foot loft in the Arts District downtown. It's my dream space, exposed brick, huge windows, open floor plan. I saved for years and stretched my budget to make it happen. My sister Emily, 31F, is a pottery artist who's been struggling with studio space. She's talented but hasn't quite broken through commercially yet. Last month at Sunday dinner, my parents, Robert 54M, Patricia 52F, started commenting on how wasteful it is for a single person to have so much space. James, you're rattling around in that huge loft while your sister can barely work in her cramped studio, my mother said. Family helps family. Emily looked uncomfortable but didn't disagree. She mentioned her current studio's rent was increasing and she might have to downsize. My father immediately suggested she could temporarily store some supplies in my place until she found something better. I wanted to be supportive, so I agreed she could use part of my spare room for storage. Emily seemed grateful but insisted it would only be for a few weeks while she looked for a new studio. Fast forward to yesterday. Emily arrived with what I describe as significantly more than some supplies. We're talking multiple pottery wheels, bags of clay, glazes, tools, and several large boxes of finished pieces. It filled the entire spare room and spilled into part of my living area. This is just the essential stuff, she explained. I'll organize it better once I figure out my new studio situation. My parents help her move everything in, commenting repeatedly about how perfect the lighting is in my loft and how the concrete floors are ideal for art. My mother even suggested Emily could do some work here occasionally, since the space is just sitting empty anyway. I'm trying to be a good brother, but something feels off about this whole situation. Emily's already mentioned she might need to work here just a few times a week, because viewing new studios is taking longer than expected. My parents keep emphasizing how lucky I am to have such a big space and how sharing is what families do. Am I overthinking this? It's just temporary storage with occasional use, right? Update 1. 2 weeks later she installed a kiln. Well, the situation has escalated faster than I expected. Remember how my sister Emily was just storing some supplies and might work here occasionally? Let me update you on what occasionally apparently means. First, the working hours. Emily now arrives at 7 a.m. sharp, Monday through Saturday. She sets up in my living room because the natural light is better than the spare room. My morning routine of coffee and checking emails in peaceful silence has been replaced by the rhythmic sound of pottery wheels and Emily's artistic process playlist. But here's where it gets interesting. Last Tuesday, I came home to find 2 men installing something in my spare room. Emily greeted me excitedly. Surprise! I found a used kiln for an amazing price. Don't worry, I already had an electrician check that your wiring can handle it. A kiln. In my apartment. When I expressed surprise, shock might be more accurate, Emily's face fell. James, you said I could work here. I can't do pottery without firing pieces. This is just temporary until my studio situation stabilizes. The word temporary is doing a lot of heavy lifting in my family lately. Then came Thursday's development. Emily asked if her pottery circle could meet here just once because their usual space had a plumbing issue. Being the accommodating brother, I agreed. What I didn't realize was that pottery circle meant 8 people, and meet meant a 3-hour workshop where Emily taught glazing techniques. Your space is perfect for this, one attendee, Margaret, gushed. Emily, you should host all our sessions here. Emily blushed and glanced at me. Well, it's my brother's place, so. But Margaret persisted. The lighting. The ambience. This is what a real artist studio should feel like. That evening, my parents called. Apparently, Emily had shared how wonderfully the workshop went. My mother was thrilled. James, do you realize what an opportunity this is? Emily could really develop her teaching practice in your space. It's so generous of you to support your sister's career this way. I tried to explain that I hadn't actually agreed to regular workshops, but my father cut in, Son, that loft has more square footage than most families' entire homes. Surely you can share a corner with your sister who's trying to make something of herself. The corner currently includes my entire spare room, half my living room, and apparently my evening peace and quiet. Emily's been nothing but apologetic, constantly saying things like, "I know this is more than we discussed," and "I promise I'm looking for studios every day." But here's what concerns me. Yesterday, I overheard her on the phone turning down a studio viewing because the lighting isn't nearly as good as what I have access to now. Access to. Not borrowing or temporarily using. Access to. The kiln ran its first full firing cycle last night. The heat made my entire apartment uncomfortably warm, and the electrical bill is going to be interesting. Emily offered to help with utilities, but when I mentioned the kiln probably uses significant electricity, she looked panicked and said her finances are really tight right now with all the transitions. I'm starting to feel like I'm subsidizing a free studio space, but every time I consider addressing it, I imagine my parents' disappointment and Emily's struggling artist situation, and I keep quiet. Next week, she wants to host another workshop. Just one more, she promises. Though she did mention that several people from the last one asked if she'd consider regular sessions. Am I still overthinking this? Update 2, 1 month later the business model has emerged. Remember when I was worried about overthinking this situation? I wasn't thinking enough. Let me paint you a picture of my current living situation. It's 6:47 a.m. on a Saturday. I'm writing this from my bedroom, the last Emily-free zone in my apartment, because my living room is being set up for Mindful Morning Pottery, a class my sister now runs 3 times a week. Yes, you read that correctly. Classes. Plural. With paying students. Let me back up and explain how we got here. After the second Pottery Circle meeting, Emily approached me with what she called a proposal. She'd been getting requests from people wanting to learn pottery, and wasn't it wonderful that she could help them explore their creativity? She showed me a carefully prepared presentation. When did she have time to make this? Outlining a temporary teaching schedule that would help her save money for her own studio. It's just 12 hours a week of actual classes, she explained, as if 12 hours was nothing. Tuesday evenings, Thursday evenings, and Saturday mornings. Small groups, very respectful. And James, I'd obviously compensate you once the classes are profitable. I was about to say no when my phone rang. My mother, with impeccable timing. Emily just told me about her teaching opportunity. James, this could be her big break. You know how hard it is for artists to make a living. As her brother, you have the power to change her life. Don't be the reason she fails. The manipulation was so obvious, yet so effective. I found myself agreeing to a trial month. That was 3 weeks ago. Here's what my life looks like now. Tuesday/Thursday, 6 to 9 p.m., wine and wheel, classes. 8 students per session paying $75 each. They bring their own wine, which inevitably leads to louder conversation, and someone always stays past 9, just to finish this piece. Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., 2 back-to-back, mindful morning sessions. 6 students per session at $60 each. The first group arrives at 7:45 to center themselves in the space. Let me do the math for you. That's $1,920 per week. $7,680 per month. Emily is running a full business out of my apartment. But wait, it gets better. Last week, I discovered she'd listed my address on something called Art Space Collective as the Loft Studio, an intimate pottery experience. The description reads, work in an authentic artist's loft with exposed brick, soaring windows, and the creative energy of the arts district. Small group instruction ensures personalized attention in this unique live/workspace. Live/workspace. She's advertising my home as a live/workspace. When I confronted her, Emily broke down crying. I know. But James, people love it here. I've gotten more students in 3 weeks than I had in 2 years at the community center. This space, it's special. It makes people feel like real artists. She showed me her notebook, a waiting list of 37 people wanting to join classes. 37. She's even had inquiries about private lessons at $150 per hour. I'm looking at studios, I swear, she said. But nothing has the ambience of your place. One student called it transformative. Another said the energy here finally unlocked her creative block. Then she hit me with the financial guilt. I've been putting every penny towards saving for a studio deposit. Just 3 more months and I'll have enough for a really good space. Please, James. I'm finally building something. The thing is, I can see she's good at this. Her students adore her. They post constantly on Instagram about their journey with clay, and tag the location as the Loft Studio. My home has become Instagram famous without my consent. But here's what really gets me. While Emily runs her profitable business from my apartment, I'm essentially confined to my bedroom during class hours. I can't cook dinner on Tuesday or Thursday until after 9 p.m. because students are using my kitchen sink to wash their hands. I can't sleep past 7 a.m. on Saturdays because people are centering themselves in my living room. My workspace has been gradually pushed into a corner. The dining table I bought for hosting friends? Covered in drying pottery. The reading nook by the window? Storage for clay bags. The kitchen island? Glazing station. And my parents? They're thrilled. Last Sunday, my mother spent dinner gushing about Emily's entrepreneurial spirit and how wonderful it is that I'm investing in family. My father added that it's good to see my excess space being used for something meaningful. Excess space. The home I worked years to afford is now excess space. The kicker came yesterday. Emily asked if she could add a Wednesday morning senior clay social, because older adults need creative outlets too. When I hesitated, she said, "I understand if it's too much. I'll just tell Mrs. Henderson and her friends that we don't have room for them." She was so excited to finally have something to look forward to after her husband passed. Mrs. Henderson. A widow. Of course. So now I'm the guy who's going to deny pottery classes to grieving seniors. I'm sitting here at 7:02 a.m., listening to the first mindful students discussing their chakras in my living room, wondering how I became a landlord who doesn't collect rent. Emily just knocked on my door to let me know they're starting, so I need to keep my TV volume low. In my own home. That I pay for. I need to keep quiet for the business I never agreed to host. But hey, at least I'm supporting the arts, right? Update 3, 6 weeks later, the family meeting that changed everything. I know it's been a while since my last update. I needed time to process what happened and figure out my next steps. Buckle up, because this is where things got interesting. After my last post, many of you suggested I needed to document everything and set firm boundaries. I took that advice. I started keeping a detailed log, class times, student numbers, overhead conversations about pricing, photos of my space being overtaken. I also consulted with a lawyer friend, Michael, who specializes in tenant law. Technically, Michael explained, your sister has established a commercial operation in a residential space. Your lease probably prohibits this. Your homeowner's insurance definitely doesn't cover it. If someone gets hurt during a class. The liability issue hadn't even occurred to me. That night, I couldn't sleep, imagining scenarios. Someone tripping over pottery equipment, the kiln malfunctioning, a drunk wine and wheel student having an accident. I was one incident away from losing everything I'd worked for. I decided to call a family meeting. I prepared carefully, printed out Emily's class schedule, her art space collective listing, photos of my overtaken apartment, and a spreadsheet showing her approximate earnings versus my expenses. I even drafted a reasonable transition plan. Emily would have 60 days to find a proper studio, could continue limited classes during the transition, and I'd help with her studio deposit. The meeting was last Sunday at my parents' house. I should have known something was off when I arrived to find not just my parents and Emily, but also my Aunt Linda, Uncle Richard, and cousins Jennifer and David. Apparently, this had become a family matter. I started presenting my case calmly. The liability issues. The lease violations. The fact that I hadn't had a peaceful evening in my own home in over 2 months. I showed them the photos, my dining table covered in pottery, my living room transformed into a studio, the corner I'd been relegated to. Before I could finish, my mother interrupted, "James, we need to talk about your priorities." My priorities? You're a young man with no family of your own, she continued. What do you need all that space for? Emily is building something beautiful, a community, a business, her future. And you want to destroy that because you're inconvenienced. My father joined in, "Son, do you know how selfish you sound? Your sister is finally succeeding, and instead of being proud, you're counting square footage like some landlord." But the real shock came from Emily. Sweet, apologetic Emily who'd been so grateful for my help. "James," she said, tears already forming, "I've been thinking about this a lot. You bought that loft in the Arts District. You wanted to be part of the creative community. Well, now you are. My students love the authenticity of working in a real artist's space. You're contributing to the arts in a way your tech job never could." Contributing. I was contributing by having my home turned into a commercial pottery studio? Aunt Linda chimed in, "Emily's right. James, you're single, you work from home. You could live anywhere. Why not find a nice one-bedroom closer to downtown? Let Emily take over the loft lease. It makes more sense for her business. Take over my lease." They weren't just comfortable with the current situation, They were planning my eviction from my own home. Or, Uncle Richard suggested, you could move into the spare room and give Emily the main space for her studio. Seems fair since she's the one actually using it productively. I looked around the room at my family, all nodding in agreement. My successful purchase of my dream home had somehow become a selfish act. My sister's takeover of my space was reframed as my contribution to the arts. My desire to live peacefully in the home I pay for was characterized as destructive to Emily's dreams. That's when I realized something crucial. They'd already discussed this. This wasn't a family meeting to address my concerns. It was an intervention to convince me to give up my home. No, I said quietly. The room erupted. How could I be so heartless? Didn't I understand that Emily was building something special? What kind of brother denies his sister success? My mother actually used the phrase, toxic masculinity, to describe my attachment to property over people. I stood up. Emily has 30 days to remove everything from my apartment. If she doesn't, I'll have it removed and change the locks. Emily's tears turned to rage. You can't do that. I have students depending on me. I have contracts. Contracts? I asked. So you admit this is a business? A business you're running illegally from my home without my permission, without insurance, without paying rent. The room went silent. I turned to my parents. You want to support Emily's art? Great. She can set up her studio in your garage. You have the space. Unless, you don't want pottery wheels running at 7 a.m. on Saturdays either. My mother stammered about their garage not being suitable, about the homeowners association, about the mess. Interesting, I said. So it's only my home that should be sacrificed for family? I left then, despite the calls to come back and be reasonable. That night, I sent Emily a formal notice via email, CCing our parents. 30 days to vacate all equipment and cease all business operations in my apartment. The next morning, I woke to 47 text messages. Extended family members I hadn't heard from in years were suddenly concerned about my cruel behavior. Emily had posted in the family Facebook group about being thrown out on the street by my own brother, with photos of her crying next to pottery pieces. But here's where it gets really interesting. One of those texts was from my cousin Sarah, who I've always been close to. Hey, call me when you can. There's something you should know about Emily's finances. I called her immediately. Turns out, Sarah's best friend Jennifer takes classes at the Loft studio. According to Jennifer, Emily had been bragging about her earnings and showing off designer purchases. She'd bought a new car, a BMW SUV, for transporting pottery supplies. She was planning a vacation to Tuscany for artistic inspiration. And the kicker? She'd been telling students she was about to sign a lease on an even bigger space but was waiting for the perfect location. All while telling me she was scraping pennies together and desperately looking for any studio space. I confronted Emily via text, asking about the BMW and the Tuscany trip. Her response? I deserve to invest in myself and my art. You wouldn't understand since you've never had to struggle. I've never had to struggle? I lived on ramen for 2 years saving for my down payment. I worked 70-hour weeks to get promotions. But sure, I've never struggled. That's when I made my decision. I hired professional movers and scheduled them for exactly 30 days from my notice. I installed security cameras, should have done that months ago. I documented every single item of Emily's in my apartment. The family pressure intensified. My mother called crying, saying I was tearing the family apart. My father said I was acting like a stranger. Emily posted daily updates on social media about her heartless brother destroying her small business. But you know what? I stood firm. 28 days later, Emily still hadn't moved anything. She was calling my bluff, confident that family guilt would break me. She even scheduled classes for after the 30-day deadline. On day 30, the movers arrived at 8 a.m. I supervised as they carefully packed every wheel, every bag of clay, every tool. The kiln required special handling. Everything was transported to a climate-controlled storage unit, which I paid for 1 month. I texted Emily the storage unit details and changed my locks. The explosion was nuclear. Emily showed up at 6 p.m. for her Tuesday class to find her key didn't work. Her students arrived to find her sobbing on my doorstep. She called the police, claiming illegal eviction. I showed them the 30-day notice, the documentation that she was running an illegal business, and my lease agreement. The officers told her it was a civil matter and suggested she retrieve her items from storage. That was 3 weeks ago. I'm still receiving family hate mail. I've been uninvited from Thanksgiving and Christmas. My mother sent a letter saying she's disappointed in the man I've become. Emily is telling everyone I destroyed her life and stole her dreams. But here's the thing, I can sit in my living room again. I can cook dinner whenever I want. I can work without the sound of pottery wheels. I can invite friends over without explaining why my home looks like a ceramics factory. Last week, I saw on Instagram that Emily is teaching classes at the community center again. Same prices, same schedule. Funny how quickly she found an alternative when forced to. My cousin Sarah sent me a screenshot yesterday. Emily posted about her Tuscany trip being postponed indefinitely due to family betrayal, with a photo of her at the BMW dealership. The caption: "When your own blood turns against you, you learn who really supports your art." The BMW is still in the photo. The one she bought with the money she earned from her desperate situation in my apartment. I've been reflecting on this whole experience. How quickly can you store some supplies became you're selfish for wanting your home back. How family can reframe exploitation as obligation. How standing up for yourself becomes betrayal when you've been cast as the eternal provider. I'm at peace with my decision. I worked hard for my home, and I deserve to enjoy it. If that makes me the villain in Emily's artistic journey, so be it. Though I do wonder, how long before my parents' garage becomes the next perfect studio space? I guess we'll find out at next Thanksgiving. Oh wait, I'm not invited. Final update, 3 months later, the plot twist nobody saw coming. I debated whether to post this update. Part of me wanted to leave things where they were, me as the family villain, Emily as the struggling artist, my parents as the disappointed elders. But what happened last month is too absurd not to share, and honestly, I need to document this somewhere before I start questioning if it really happened. For 3 months after I evicted Emily's pottery empire, I was persona non grata. Family gatherings happened without me. My mother's birthday passed with only a terse thank you for the flowers I sent. The family WhatsApp group continued without me. I'd been quietly removed. I focused on work, enjoyed my reclaimed space, and started therapy to process the guilt and gaslighting. My therapist, Dr. Catherine, helped me understand how years of being the successful sibling had set me up to be the family ATM, and how my parents' financial anxieties manifested as moral judgments about my excess. Then, last month, I got a call from my cousin Sarah at 11 p.m. "James, you need to check the county clerk's website. Search property records for your address." My stomach dropped. Property records? What's going on? Just look. Then call me back. I pulled up the site, typed in my address, and there it was, a lien filed against my property for $47,000. The claimant, Emily Harrison, doing business as the Loft Studio, for unpaid rent, utilities, and business improvements. My hands shook as I called Sarah back. "Jennifer found out today," Sarah explained. "Emily's been telling everyone you were her business partner, that you'd verbally agreed to a 50-50 split of the studio, and that evicting her was breach of contract. She hired some sketchy lawyer who apparently files these kinds of claims hoping for settlements." I couldn't speak. My own sister had filed a fraudulent lien against my home. "James, there's more," Sarah continued. "My mom overheard Aunt Patricia at book club. Your parents knew Emily was planning this. They helped her find the lawyer. My parents. My own parents conspired to help my sister file a fraudulent claim against my property." I hung up and immediately called Michael, my lawyer friend. He was at my apartment within an hour, reviewing the documents. "This is clearly fraudulent," he said, "but you'll need to formally contest it. These kinds of liens can complicate any future sale or refinancing. We need to act fast." That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about every family dinner, every guilt trip, every manipulation. Had they always seen me as just a resource to be exploited? The next morning, I hired a real attorney, not just a friend, but a bulldog who specialized in fraud cases. Lisa took one look at the documents and smiled grimly. "Your sister made a crucial mistake. She filed this as a business claim, which means we can subpoena her business records. Tax returns, bank statements, everything." "She won't have much," I said. "It was all cash, informal." Lisa's smile widened. "Even better. If she claimed business losses on a lien but didn't report business income to the IRS. The machinery of justice, once started, moves faster than you'd think." Lisa filed an immediate contest of the lien along with a countersuit for fraud, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She also sent preservation letters to every social media platform where Emily had posted about her studio, creating a legal obligation to maintain those records. Emily's lawyer, probably realizing he'd attached his name to a fraudulent claim, withdrew from representation within 72 hours. But the real fireworks came when Lisa subpoenaed Emily's financial records. Within a week, we had everything. Bank deposits showing the thousands in cash from pottery classes, Venmo transactions from students, the BMW loan application where she'd listed her income as $8,000 per month from the Loft studio, and the lease application for a commercial space where she'd claimed 2 years of business history at my address. She'd created a paper trail proving she'd run a business from my apartment while simultaneously claiming I owed her money for that same business. When Emily was served with the countersuit, she called me sobbing. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. "James, please, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Mom and Dad said you'd just settle, that you'd never actually fight family. Please don't do this. I'll drop everything if you just call me back." I forwarded the voicemail to Lisa. 2 days later, my parents showed up at my building. The doorman, briefed on the situation, didn't let them up. They stood outside for an hour, my mother crying, my father pacing. They left a letter under my door anyway. The building manager found it and gave it to me. I've read it a dozen times. It's a masterpiece of manipulation disguised as parental concern. Dearest James, we don't know what happened to the loving boy we raised. Emily may have made mistakes, but she's your sister. Family forgives. Family protects each other. Your vindictive behavior is tearing us apart. If you proceed with this lawsuit, you're not just suing Emily, you're suing all of us. The family will never forgive you. Please remember who you used to be. All our love, Mom and Dad. Who I used to be? You mean the son who never said no? The brother who subsidized everyone else's dreams? The family member who was only valued for what he could provide? I gave the letter to Lisa too. She added it to our evidence file, proof of attempted witness intimidation. The legal process moved quickly after that. Faced with overwhelming evidence of fraud and the possibility of IRS involvement, Emily agreed to drop the lien in exchange for me not pursuing criminal charges. She had to sign a statement acknowledging the lien was filed in error, and that she had no claim to my property or any business that had operated there. But the aftermath is where things get really interesting. Remember how my parents said the family would never forgive me? Well, turns out family gossip works both ways. When word got out that Emily had tried to steal my home through fraud, and that my parents had helped, the extended family divided. Aunt Linda, who'd suggested I move out of my own loft, suddenly remembered how Emily had borrowed $5,000 from her last year for studio equipment and never paid it back. Uncle Richard discovered Emily had been telling potential investors that he was a silent partner in her business. Cousin Jennifer realized the charity auction pottery Emily had donated had actually been sold, with Emily pocketing the money. One by one, family members started reaching out to me. Not with apologies, that would require admitting they were wrong, but with their own stories of Emily's deceptions. The family Thanksgiving I was banned from? It imploded when Emily showed up in her BMW wearing designer clothes and talking about her temporary setback before asking Grandma for a loan. According to Sarah, Grandma asked why someone with a BMW needed a loan. Emily's response, that the car was a necessary business expense, didn't go over well with relatives who'd been guilted into supporting struggling artist Emily. My parents, faced with the family schism they'd helped create, went into damage control mode. They tried to claim they'd been misled by Emily, that they'd had no idea about the fraudulent lien, that they just wanted their children to get along. But Aunt Linda had already shared the book club story. Uncle Richard had forwarded the emails where my father strategized about getting James to see reason. The family WhatsApp group, which I'd been removed from, apparently contained months of my parents coaching Emily on how to maximize her claim against me. Last week, I got a call from my mother. First contact in 2 months. "James," she said, her voice carefully modulated, "I think we all need to move past this unpleasantness. Emily has learned her lesson. You've made your point. Can't we just be a family again?" "We are family," I replied. "But family doesn't mean I have to accept theft, fraud, and betrayal. Family doesn't mean I'm obligated to fund everyone else's lives while being told I'm selfish for having boundaries." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "So you're choosing your money over your family?" "No, Mom. I'm choosing my self-respect over manipulation. There's a difference." She hung up. Emily, from what I hear, is back to teaching at the community center. The BMW was repossessed last month. The Tuscany trip became a weekend in Nashville. The commercial studio space she was going to lease never materialized. But here's the strangest part, she's still telling people I ruined her life. According to the narrative she's spinning, she was on the verge of opening a major studio, had investors lined up, and was about to launch a pottery line when her jealous brother destroyed everything. The fraudulent lien, never mentioned. The thousands she earned from my apartment? Written out of history. Some people believe her. Others don't. I've stopped caring. I'm writing this from my reclaimed loft, sitting in the reading nook that used to store clay. The pottery wheel marks have been refinished out of the floors. The electrical system has been checked and confirmed safe after the kiln adventure. My home is mine again. But more than that, I've learned something valuable. When people show you who they are, believe them. When family treats you like a resource instead of a person, it's okay to close the vault. And when someone calls you selfish for having boundaries, they're usually just mad they can no longer take advantage of you. My therapist says I'm making progress. The guilt is fading, replaced by a clearer understanding of what healthy family relationships should look like. Hint, they don't involve fraudulent liens or conspiracy to commit theft. As for the future, I'm hosting my own Thanksgiving this year. Sarah's coming, along with a few cousins who've reached out in support. We're calling it Honest Thanksgiving. No guilt trips, no manipulation, just turkey and genuine gratitude. Emily won't be invited. Neither will my parents. And for the first time in my life, I'm okay with that. Epilogue. 6 months later. I wasn't going to add to the story, but something happened yesterday that felt like cosmic closure. I was at a coffee shop downtown when I heard a familiar voice behind me. The energy in their last space was just transformative. You could feel the creativity in those exposed brick walls. I turned to see one of Emily's former students, Jennifer, not my cousin, different Jennifer, talking to a friend. "It's such a shame what happened," the friend replied. "Emily was so inspiring. I couldn't help myself." Jennifer. From the pottery classes. She recognized me immediately, her face flushing. "Oh, James. Hi. How are the new classes at the community center?" I asked pleasantly. She shifted uncomfortably. "I actually stopped going. It's not the same. Emily seems different. Bitter. She spends half the class complaining about family and success and people not understanding artists. It's really brought down the vibe." Her friend chimed in, "That's why I didn't sign up for another session. I came for pottery, not therapy." They excused themselves quickly, but not before Jennifer said quietly, "I'm sorry about everything. We didn't know the full story." I finished my coffee thinking about transformative energy and exposed brick walls. About how the same space can be a prison or a sanctuary, depending on who controls it. About how supporting family should never mean sacrificing yourself. My loft is still my sanctuary. The exposed brick still catches the morning light beautifully. But now it's just for me and the life I'm building on my own terms. And that's the most transformative thing of all.